Test.
All right, I'm going to call this meeting, the June 26th Board of Supervisors meeting to order now, please. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The township met in executive session earlier this evening to discuss legal matters, nothing real estate, but just legal matters and things like that. We have a couple amendments to the agenda. I just want to point out first. Can you tell me exactly how I should phrase them?
So you're gonna amend, is it N? We have item N. Thanks. Bancroft Road Bridge to add to that element, the expenditure of funds to resolve right-of-way issues.
Okay. And can I get a motion to amend the agenda for that item?
I'll make the motion to amend.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we have a second amendment.
I think that Mr. Alabama,
The issue with Kennet Township, so Kennet Township is has a conditional use hearing for the CAX building. I believe the date of that is July 5th. We are a adjoining municipality, as well as we share part of the site within our municipal boundaries. And I found the reason we need the amendment is I found out about this less than a week ago about the scheduled hearing. And I believe that any township should participate in shared and neighboring projects. And the amendment that I would be requesting is that we send a designated either board member or the manager to the meeting.
Okay, can I have an amendment that we're going to, and I guess we would vote on who would be going later once we amend it?
do you intend to support
Or
the
do-
application? Do you want to vote on that?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you add that to?
Yeah, I'll add that we do want to see the project, and we want to attend in support of the application.
Did you want to also commit to going to?
Yeah, and I will attend as well as I think there would be room for one other supervisor and the manager, or I can go by myself.
Is anyone else? I'm not going to be in town the 5th, but is anyone else going to want to go with Steve, or we can ask Chris to go? July 5th.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so we'll amend the agenda to support that and instruct Steve and Chris to go and attend. So can I have a motion to do that?
I'll make the motion. Chris, if you can attend, I can work it out.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank
Agenda's amended. Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to township updates, and we have a couple new staff members. We have Becky Juarez, the code enforcement officer. Did you want to speak to that?
Yes, I just wanted to use this time to briefly introduce a few new faces to the town hall staff and some critical positions of need. So I was going to identify them in terms of order of when they actually join the township. So Becky, you can stand in place right there. You don't have to actually come up here, but this is Becky Juarez. She's our new full-time code enforcement officer for the New Garden Township. She comes with us, and I have my actual reading notes here so I don't mess anything up. But she has a criminology study background from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and working right now to try to see a continued interest in federal level type workforce. But while she's finalizing her degree and continuing to work and operate here in the Kennet area, this was another public service investment for her to be able to participate in. She has a significant background in substance abuse and behavioral health kind of programs, and familiar with the area, being a local resident, as well as is it E4 or E5? E4, and the Army National Guard as an active reservist as well. So what's that? E4 Mafia. I believe that's specialist, correct? I'm a Navy person by trade, so the Army's kind of make up ranks as they go along. But no, welcome, Becky. You don't have to come up and say anything, but just wanted to kind of say hi. So you'll see her kind of actively doing our proactive maintenance program for our code enforcement, working underneath our community development department director, who is the second official that we were able to bring on board here. So this is Robert Weir Jr. I'll add that on there. And he joins us from faraway London Grove Township. So he's this has been a position need that's been open for the township since October. So almost going on 10 months in terms of just how competitively and tough it is to find and hire and retain and attract talent for these types of trades that we have for the township. So He has the extensive public sector background, which made him a great fit and alignment for this function for the Community Development Department, which, from those unfamiliar, is a newly organized component of New Garden Township that oversees all land development, zoning type issues, programmatic enforcement for all of our enforcement area functions, and the ability to kind of also serve as a department director in the budget and informational kind of processes as well. He has extensive experience in Marlboro East, correct? Township as in the Public Works Department, and then was brought over to London Grove, where his primary purview was as serving as the zoning officer, building official, served as the fire marshal, as well as serving on their board of supervisors. And his primary experience at the very end there for the last few years was serving as assistant township manager. So he brings extensive land development understanding here at the township, and we're happy to have him aboard. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
Welcome to both of you. Thanks. Next up, we have acceptance of resignation of Amy Lieberman from the New Garden Township Historical Commission. Did you want to speak to that? Or did you just want to speak generally, Randy? Okay. So yeah, unfortunately, they've fled to Penn Township, as some of our other residents have done. So yeah. Well, if you have any suggestions, if anyone has interest. Well, all right, if you want to segue into what, do you want to counter offer on your house? So if anyone knows anyone that might want to serve on the historical commission, please just fill out a form at the website and send it into the office, and we'll get in touch with you.
Thank you for everything. You've done a lot of work.
Do I need it? Do we need a vote for the resignation? Okay, can we get a vote to accept the resignation then? Do we have a motion to accept?
I will make a motion to accept the resignation of Amy Lieberman from the New Garden Township Historical Commission.
I have a second.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, so again, appreciate your support. So we'll go into public comments. The first card I have is from Warren Reynolds at 973 Penn Green Road.
Yes, my name is Warren Reynolds, and my family and I own one of the few remaining farms in New Garden Township. As the board knows, we conserved our farm at considerable economic loss to do our part to preserve open space and quality of life in New Garden Township. We're currently suffering an unmitigated intrusion, significantly degrading our quality of life by an issue that is specifically covered in the township zoning ordinance. The prime purpose of the zoning ordinance is to protect residents' quality of life. Its intention is to separate incompatible land uses. People care very much about what they're confronted with when they step outside their door. Section 200-100 screening of the zoning ordinance was written to mitigate the negative effects of incompatible uses. It reads in part, quote, "Vegetative screens shall be required by the Board of Supervisors under the following circumstances. 1, where a proposed industrial or commercial use, excuse me, abuts an existing residential or agricultural use or district. Its purpose is, quote, to reduce possible light, sound, and visual intrusions caused by some permitted uses that would otherwise impact upon neighboring properties. Our farm is an agricultural use in a residential agricultural district. Adjacent to us, a very large industrial type building has rather suddenly been erected. It looms over the landscape from most locations on the farm, including from our front door. The whole feeling of where we live has changed. And I must say, my family has spent generations carefully tending the farm, and we work very hard to present beautiful vistas to the public which you can see from Bollamore Pike and Penn Green Road. The whole feeling of where we live has changed. It feels more like we're living in an industrial park now. That's very impactful to us. This situation is exactly what the ordinance was written for. This is a definitional case. Additionally, the landscaping section of the zoning ordinance states, purpose, maintain the rural quality of the township and enhance the appearance of a site for the betterment of the township. It's my understanding that the New Garden Township Open Space Review Board has expressly stated their support for the application of New Garden's screening ordinance in general and in this case. My family and I simply ask that the legal ordinance of the township be applied. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Okay, next we have Dave Kreiser and Michael Lowenstein from the Pemberton HOA and Karen Olmsted, president of the HOA.
Yes, Karen is flying in from Vancouver, so she couldn't make it. First, an appreciation to Chris and to Mark Gordon. We were here at the last meeting, I think you remember, I'm getting a sense of deja vu. We had a situation where the adjoining property behind the odd numbered homes on Kestrel Court, there's a landscaping operation. So we've seen all the communication, particularly today, that as of June the 22nd, they received a notice of violation that they are to cease and desist, removed by July 20th, or there are financial consequences. So an appreciation to the board and also to the township management for taking care of that. One of the things that's occurred, just in brief, is that we've had a couple of residents already indicate that they're going to move. And they're going to move because of this exact situation. So it comes at a good time. Hopefully we can now forestall some of that. The second thing that I want to mention just briefly, we recognize that we have no standing, legal or otherwise, with regard to escrow payments that are made back to the builder, Bentley. We are concerned about this. We've been after progress, movement toward a notice of termination. Now it feels like a year and a half. They have retention basin issues that have to take place. I have with me a 4-page punch list of things that Bentley, per plan, when it was Hawks Glen, they were supposed to do that they haven't done. So we've been suffering through a number of Band-Aids and bad surgery. So we recognize that we really can't do anything about the payment that's scheduled for tonight, but we want to be on record as expressing concern about these continued payments and Bentley just putting a line in the sand and not really doing anything to remediate or to fix their issues. So I don't know if you have any questions, but that's basically our statement for this evening.
Right, thank you.
Okay.
So we have any questions for him or?
If you'd like to have a copy of the punch list.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that would be
Okay,
helpful.
would be
Yeah.
helpful. Glad to give it.
So we can double check on that.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Nancy. I'm sorry about your last name. 2 Pelham Drive. Renegade.
Hey, yes, I'm Nancy Regany. I live in Landenberg Hunt. In fact, my house backs up to the park here. And one of my first concerns was just to hear more about the poisonous hemlock and what's being done. I've seen the signs come back up again and it's getting a little closer to my house, so it's making me a little nervous. And then the second thing is we just had our homeowners association meeting last weekend. And, you know, we continue to have concerns about Laurel Valley Farms, their hours of operation, their impact on the quality, the air quality, whatever air quality studies are in process. I heard a lot from my neighbors about the impact on their HVAC systems, on their electric systems. I've had to replace parts of my front door. It's corroding. I'm concerned about health, the quality of my child's health and all of my neighbors, hearing some of the health challenges that we've had in our neighborhood. And so I'm just very interested in knowing what's being looked at by the township.
Thank you. Do you know when we'll have our next report on the monitoring station?
It was about a few weeks ago, and that was also represented from the township by two other board members, as well as, I don't know if he's in the audience today. Is it Don? There he is. Okay, there, I think you're hidden behind there. I can't see you. So right now there is an ongoing interval data study being performed by Pennsylvania DEP on the, I guess, hydrogen sulfide type levels. This was a process that was commissioned before my time here in the township, but a significant amount of information is kind of currently at hand that needs to be fully, in my understanding, vetted in terms of threshold levels. But this is just the hydrogen sulfide component of it. The township did commission, Westchester commissioned air quality assessment that also included nitrogen levels, and some of the sensors are kind of put in different areas. And so what they're ultimately seeking is not only our current monitoring stations and what that information means, but also approaching through the relationship through the DEP, the ag extension of getting source point monitors put closer to the actual soil farms in and of itself. Just with where the sensors are, you have the variabilities of environmentals and things kind of get out into the ether, if you will, wind, everything like that, and it impacts the actual readings of themselves. And so that's kind of where we're at right now in the monitoring situation. And unfortunately, it's a long process because we need to get as much information to capture. In this case, I think we were up above 12,000 over the course of about 18 months of just interval hour assessments for one study. We're trying to get the other study up to speed to lean against that one, and it needs to be as much of an apples to apples comparison. So that's kind of where we're at right now. But we are continuing to monitor it. We are engaged with the Pennsylvania DEP, and we've had these, we'll call them ongoing touch points about the status of the monitoring effort.
And I'm very curious, as I'm sure a lot of other people are, as to when this air quality assessment will be made available. Is there any estimated date?
So the DEP report is public?
Is not.
It is not. It is not. And we can give you the data that we have from the township study. I think, Don, you've given us some preliminary results. I mean, we can take a minute and have Don go through what the $35,000 worth of township second supplemental study has shown with 3 independent monitors, but DEP is holding their report for some reason. We don't know. And there's nothing that we can do about that. That would be a question for your state legislators who actually signed their checks.
Do this report independently.
Correct.
Just to clarify that, I just want to make sure it's understood. We commissioned the Westchester study. So we have full access to getting that report synthesized through the actual staff at Westchester. It's the DEP one. They provide us with a subset of raw data necessarily that was not, for their standpoint, still pending synthesis into a final report that has yet to be delivered to the township. So we don't have that report yet from PADEP on their own provided raw sample. You can get access to the raw sample. We can provide that over, but it would be nonsensical because it requires a tremendous amount of context behind it. We're pushing DEP to give that report. Okay. Mm.
Okay, then we have Mr. Lieberman from Historic, formerly of Historic Misty Hollow. Sure, yeah, thank you.
I knew nothing about what your comments were coming into this, so I don't, hopefully I'm not setting myself up for failure here. But I'm a longtime resident of Landenberg, and I recently moved to Jennersville. But I am a community activist and have been on the board of directors of the Mushroom Festival for 15 years. And I'm here at this moment to ask the Board of Supervisors if they, again, as they have in the past, support the Mushroom Festival by way of sponsorship. We raise a significant amount of money by putting on this festival the weekend after Labor Day every year. We're on our 38th year. And most townships in the area, most boroughs, as well as most organizations, business organizations, and obviously mushroom growers, you support this by way of sponsorships. And with that being said, I just want to say that the mushroom industry to this township they're tied together to the hip, because they're the largest concentration of mushroom farms and growing activity does take place in New Garden Township. Now, it doesn't come without any side effects and problems. But at the same time, I think that as a community, we work together, that they're open-eared. I know Laurel Valley Farms has, I don't know exactly what they've done to try to mitigate some of their issues of smell and whatnot, but I know they've acquired some more land recently on Egypt Run Road. And I think with the proper amount of supervision, that they, they'll do what it takes to survive there. But nonetheless, I'm here to respectfully ask the Board of Supervisors to again be a shiitake sponsor, which would be $2,500. For this year's festival. And
Is there a time you need an answer by? Is that something we could look at for next month?
the next 3 weeks, 21 days.
Okay.
Just to clarify, so obviously these decisions were made prior to my arrival, but to my understanding, there was actually an earmark for 2,500 for FY23 funds for the Mushroom Festival.
We think we have it in the budget that was approved. Correct, Chris?
Okay, so,
Oh, it's already in.
so the check is going to go out.
It is in there.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
But I think by show of hands or by vote, approved to release the check would be appropriate.
That would be.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to cut the check for the mushroom? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 This is
And then anyone else from the public have comments? Okay. Before you go, Warren, we're going to have Winnie look into your issue and get back to you. So. All right. Appreciate you coming out. All right.
Thank
Good to
you.
see you. Okay. And we're going to move on to approval of the minutes from the May 15th meeting. Do we have an approval or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes of May 15th of 2023 as submitted.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, unanimous. All right, with the treasurer's report, approval of paid invoices in the amount of $74,312.44 and unpaid invoices in the amount of $353,268.96, totaling $427,581.40. And do you have any conflicts, Steve?
I do not. There is a reimbursement check in there for several supervisors, but with the solicitor's blessing, we can vote on that, correct? It's reimbursement for mileage. We're good. I'll make the motion that we approve paying the total bills of $427,581.40.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. And we have the Public Works Department report.
Good evening. I will try to keep this quick because we have a full agenda. For the last couple weeks, about 5, I guess, since the last time we met. Aside from the normal PA1 calls that we get throughout the month, we had 9 of them come in that were emergency calls that have to be responded to within an hour. They were all during business hours, so they had to be called in. We adjusted the light in Tough Kenneman at Baltimore Pike and Newark Road twice from getting hit by a tractor trailer and spinning the wrong way. With the rain we've been having every day for the last few days, we've had to do 4 road checks to check for trees down and limbs down and stuff like that. There was 5 signs knocked down in the last month, 4 of which were stop signs. So they had to be responded to immediately. One of them was after hours. Somebody had to be called in for that. We spent a total of 9 days mowing road banks. I don't know who has a voodoo doll of me, but it was hard to do this time. We had a number of breakdowns, bearings, hydraulic hoses, O-rings, coolant leaks, shifter cables, some knife brackets broke off. We had to weld them back on. So it fought us every step of the way, but we finally got them done. An additional 3 days were spent weed eating guide rails after we did the road banks in between all the posts and everything. We had a DEP required site visit for our underground storage tanks. That needs to be done every 3 years. We passed with flying colors. No issues were found. As far as overall operation of the pumps and tanks and all that stuff anyway. While we were out doing road checks and mowing road banks, we noticed several low hanging branches over the roads. Some of them were just completely hanging. Some of them were just broken off. Some of them had to be climbed. Others we were able to get with from the loader. We cut them down and chipped them up and got them cleared out. There was a number of logs and limbs that we found in the areas that we mow, so we chipped them up to save wear and tear on the mowers. There was a fuel spill on Scarlet Road. The guys went out, put oil dry down, spread it around, let traffic run over it overnight since they weren't calling for any rain, and then we cleaned it up the following morning. There was roughly 30 boards on the Landenberg Bridge walkway that were bowed up and presented a tripping hazard. So we replaced them. And then there was quite a few more that we re-secured because they were starting to bow up. We have spent 6 days trimming trees along roads. That's actually like starting at the beginning of the road and working our way in and out and in, down and back, whatever you want to call it, for clearance for trash trucks, school buses, plow trucks, stuff like that. Higgins was called in for the light at Scarlet and Cypress. It just randomly went into flash. They repaired that. I have not gotten the bill for that yet, so I'm not 100% sure what happened there. One worker was called in for a tree down on Egypt Run Road, which he cut up and threw off into the woods. And then today we had to close Bucktoe for a few hours for a tree down on wires. Pico removed the tree from the wires, and then we cleaned up the mess. And then coming up in the next month or so, we're going to continue on tree trimming as the weather allows. Our paving is hoping we'll start mid-January. We are waiting on DEP. We're waiting on liquid fuels approval for that to go through. All the paperwork's been submitted. We're just waiting on an answer from them. And then we still have a couple pipe projects we're working on. We're just waiting till we get a couple minutes to do that. And that is all I have, unless you guys have any questions for me.
I don't think so. No.
All right, thank you
for all your effort.
Back later in the agenda.
Okay, we have the airport update. Oh, there we go.
Good evening, everybody. I'm here tonight to discuss a different topic later on with the airport terminal project. As far as an airport update, I'm happy to report the airport's doing well. We're extremely busy. We're booking about 3 months out now in our maintenance shop. The flight school with May and the beginning part of June, the weather being perfect for flying and free weekends. They've been very active. So fuel sales are up, operational count is up. We also have a new hire in the maintenance shop, a new AMP technician. Noah Bradley has come to us out of the Pittsburgh Institute of Technology. He worked for a short time for a company in Philadelphia and has joined the GA side, the general aviation side, maintenance here at New Garden. So we're pleased to have another AMP to certainly help with the workload. So things are going well. We've got our Future Aviator Summer Camp starting up in 2 weeks. So full throttle straight ahead on that. We've got about 135 campers for the week attending from all over, as far away as Hong Kong and France.
Very cool. Thank you. Okay, fire company report.
Good evening, everyone. We'll start with the EMS response for May. There's a total of 148 dispatches. In-district dispatches were 100 in New Garden, 7 in Avondale Borough, 3 in London Britton Township, and 7 in West Marlborough. Out of district, we had 7 in London Grove, 3 in Kennett Township, 5 in Kennett Square Borough, 5 in Newcastle County, 4 in East Marlborough Township, 6 in Penn, and 1 in Londonderry. There was a total of 58 BLS transports and 33 ALS transports. The outcome for the dispatches, 91 transports, 22 refusals, 16 recalls, 11 no services, 3 assist fire department, and 5 QRS responses. The dispatches broke down by shift, 6A to 6P, 93, 6P to 6A were 55. They missed a total of 17, and 7 of the 17 were transports. Missed dispatches by municipality, 13 in New Garden, 1 in London Britton, 3 in West Marlborough. Second dispatches taken were 19, and then 3 on third dispatches. Providers who covered for REMS while they were out, Longwood had 7, they transported 4. West Grove was dispatched 4, they transported 1. Hockessin was dispatched 5, transported 2. And average dispatch to arrival was 10 minutes, and dispatch to available in quarters was 69 minutes. That is the EMS report. Regarding the fire operations side of it, 31 dispatches, 19 in New Garden, 2 in Avondale Borough, 1 in London Britton, 2 in West Marlborough. Out of district, 1 Lancaster County, 3 Cecil County, 1 Newcastle County, and 2 Londonderry Township. The average of volunteers, career, and fire police per shift, Monday through Friday, 7A to 3P were 6 volunteers, 0.5 on career, and 4 fire police. For 3 p.m. to 11, we had 8 volunteers, 1 career, 3 fire police. 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., we had 5 volunteers, 1 career, 1 fire police. For the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 7A to 3P, we had 4 volunteers and 1 fire police. 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., 8 volunteers, 0.3 career, and 4 fire police. And 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., we had 4 volunteers, 0.5 career, and 1 fire police. Total dispatches per shift, 7A to 3P were 16. 3 p.m. to 11 were 12. 11 p.m. to 7 were 3. Dispatch to average response time from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. were 6 minutes. 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., 7 minutes. And 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. were 9 minutes. Property value protected for the month was $8 million. Property value loss was $875,000. There were 8 structures, 1 EMS assist, 5 vehicle accidents, 4 police assist, 3 canceled en route, 1 cover other station, 2 incidents no found, 1 rescue, 2 hazardous materials, 1 public service, and 2 trash. That is the fire and EMS reports for the month of May.
Great, thank you. Okay, then we have the Southern Chester County Regional Police Report.
Good evening, everyone. I'll try to keep this brief. First off, I just want to explain the sectors. So when I say sectors, y'all know what I'm talking about. New Garden Township is broken up into two. 10 sector is north of 41, 20 sector is south of 41. Excuse me, Avondale Borough is 30 sector and West Grove Borough is 40 sector. This is going to be week number 18 through week 22, which encompasses the month of May. For citations in 10 sector, again, north of 41, there were 68 citations written, 25 warnings, 3 DUI arrests. For 20 sector, 23 citations were written, 22 warnings and 4 DUI arrests were made. New Garden totals at that time are going to be 91 citations, 47 warnings and 7 DUI arrests. Throughout that time period, the officers responded to 402 total calls for service for all the sectors. 215 of those were in 10 sector. Excuse me. 88 were in 20 sector, 35 were in 30 sector, and 62 of them were in 40 sector. That leaves 2 that are undetermined, which could very well have been assists of other agencies outside that wouldn't have fallen into one of our 4 sectors. Our traffic safety unit, Officer Sullivan's in the process of applying for a weights and measures training, which is dramatically going to be assisting us in our truck enforcement around here. So once he gets that, he'll have more qualifications and certifications to again aid in his truck enforcement. Our CID, which is our Criminal Investigations Division, currently over that time period, they received 2 CY-47s, which come to us from Chester County detectives and indicate allegations of child abuse. 2 were received that month. That's not a big number, but it's still too many. We have 2 rape investigations that came in, 1 in Kennett Square and 1 in Tough Kenneman. Those are open cases. So unfortunately, it's all the information I can provide on those right now. And 1 Megan's Law violation. Throughout that time period, our investigators were doing our background investigations for our 4 new hires as well. And while we were doing our firearms qualifications, they were actually covering the streets. So they had a busy month and actually got a lot done. We had our first national night out meeting on the 21st. There's going to be 2 locations this year. One's going to be on Pomeroy Avenue in Avondale. One's going to be on Rose Hill in Town Square at West Grove. Chief Greenwald's been working to get donations from local businesses. They're always very generous, and we usually end up, getting exactly what we need out of them for, entertainments, food, giveaways for kids, things of that nature. National Night Out is going to be taking place on August 1st, if anyone's interested. Also, we're going to be having a swearing in ceremony right here on July 13th to swear in our 4 new officers. We have Jose Alvarez, who comes to us with about 13 years experience from Chester City Police Department. He's an SRO and NASRO certified. So he's going to be an asset. He is a Spanish speaking officer. He's very, very, very community oriented. So with a lot of these community events that we have, you'll be seeing his face a lot. Christopher Galley was with Oxford Borough, worked with Newark PD, and came back to PA. So he's brings some experience with him too. They both already began their field training and will be on an abbreviated field training schedule because of their past experience. We also have a young lady that came to work with us fresh out of the academy. Her name is Amy Marie Jeffress. She will have a full 3-month-long field training process just because of her lack of experience, but she's brilliant and she's going to be an asset to us. Last, we have Dave Madonna, who worked with us in the past. He left to proceed, to go to the National Guard and try his hand in a few other things. But fortunately, we're lucky to have him coming back with us. So he, again, will be on an abbreviated field training program once he gets back. So other than that, I don't think I have anything else unless anyone has any questions for me. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a verification that it is swearing in of these officers occur on July 13th.
Yes, sir.
And that would be 4 police officers?
Yes, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Great. All right. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And moving on to the general regular business, we have a zoning hearing board application for 102 Landenberg Road.
mean, the memorandum in front of you in the packet is pretty much a quick synopsis of what was approved through the planning commission. It's about the usage of the current Landenberg Hotel, which had a prior use of being kind of a bed and breakfast hotel that under the current R zoning, since it had been converted into apartments and semi-office, going back to a B and B type structure would actually be considered to be outside of the zoning requirement, even though it's reverting back to its natural state. And so this one would just be that the draft motion was to support because that's mimicking the planning commission. Usually it's just a, was it like a taking no position, excuse me. But this one would be just if you have any questions about the actual intended nature of the Landenberg Hotel, it would be for a bed and breakfast short-term stay type use. And
I'm just going to let you guys know that the applicant did come to the historical commission meeting earlier this month, and he seems to be a very reputable gentleman. He has, good plans for the property. The only question I had was, do we have short-term rental ordinances? Is that covered in any? Because he, obviously wants to do like an Airbnb bed and breakfast sort of thing. So I was wondering if that's allowed at all in the township?
this was actually when we were going through our rental inspection ordinance draft review. It actually is not. So that's one where we would have to actually provide that language as an either exemption, or we would have to actually get a commissioned no short-term rental ordinance component to our actual zoning ordinance. So it's way to measure about what the board wants to do.
Do you find them to support the application, David?
Yes. Yeah, he also wants to continue with the Landenberg store, just with a kind of change in focus. He wants to have it open earlier in the day, so people can use it for coffee and like they used to, and have it as sort of like the check-in for the hotel. And so be able to use staff from the hotel to operate the store, because that's, I think, it's been a challenge for the store to find people to be able to work consistent hours. So I think it's a good plan overall.
Mhm.
And he's also amenable to, if this is successful, looking at other buildings in the area that are historic and working on kind of bringing in that sort of short term, I guess, business plan. So if y'all are amenable, I would suggest we support the zoning hearing board application.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Yeah. From what he said, it seemed to be contingent. So it's, what's the word for when you buy something? Condition. What's the- Contingent, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so he hasn't signed the deal yet, but he has a contingent purchase. Yeah.
Mhm.
You moved out the wrong time. Landenberg's gonna be booming. Okay, I'm gonna move on to another zoning hearing board application for 149 Old Limestone Road. If
you
you
ca-
want to use the, yeah. Thank you.
Do we have anyone on Zoom?
No, but I think we're recording this just for posterity as well.
We are recording and it is live.
Yes.
Yep.
Again, good evening Supervisors. My name is Neil Land and I represent the Millers, Mr. and Mrs. Patty Miller, who are the owners of the property down at Old Limestone Road. We are seeking relief from the zoning hearing board in the nature of a special exception as well as two variances. The special exception is to expand the non-conforming use, and the variances are to expand that use de minimisly into 2 front yards. I have some paperwork here that might help you understand what's going on here. Property is situated between Old Limestone Road and if you can, when you get this, you'll see some aerial images. As a result, kind of a triangular lot that has 2 front yards. This is also a property where the Miller family has owned this property since the 1800s. They've had a house there since 1927. This is where Mr. Miller grew up, and it was used as family residence up until, well, only a few years ago. It is in your HC Highway Commercial Zoning District, so single-family dwellings are not permitted uses in that zoning district. It is what I would suggest a non-conforming use and has been for many, many, many decades. There was some discussions. Mr. Miller was approached by the township about a year and a half ago. Chris Adamant, I think, was your zoning officer at that time, and was requesting that the house, the original house on the property, which had kind of fallen in the state of disrepair, be demolished. And what he did was he worked with Mr. Miller's in the third row here in the black shirt, and worked out what he thought, my client thought was an agreement with him that, hey, we'll work with you guys to take this down, no problem. We just want to put something in its place when we're done. So that they did. And I think if Chris was here, he would tell you that Millers were very easy to work with and did what they needed to do as soon as they were asked to do it. Now, as they go to put a new house back, they've looked for houses. Manufactured home is what's going to go there. Nothing fits exactly, of course, in the footprint of where the old house used to sit. So the closest thing they could get is basically about 2 feet over on each side. So what we're doing in essence is expanding that non-conforming use, which is the single-family dwelling. And I suggest we're doing it into the 2 front yards de minimisly, because it's going to go 2 feet or less into each direction above and beyond what it was before. And so I think that kind of sets forth what we're trying to do and what we're hoping that you will support from us. We do have a zoning hearing tomorrow night. We went to your planning commission a few weeks ago and they supported us unanimously. We're hoping to get the same from you tonight. If there's any questions, please let me know.
Couple questions. Neil, it's good to see you. 2 feet each way.
Yes.
That's probably the minimum, in your opinion, that they could do it.
That's the dimensions of the unit which Mr. Miller is going to be purchasing.
Okay, understood.
And so with the driveway access, it looks like it's going to be on Limestone Road itself. Would they be on Old Limestone or?
It's good. The driveway is not moving. It's going to be in the exact same place. And I think that exits onto Old Limestone Road.
Old limestone.
All right.
Yeah, there's nothing else changing on the property other than the old house.
Okay, I just wasn't sure what this little 34.5 thing seemed to be.
I think that goes to what is the road right of way.
Yeah.
Off the back.
Right.
And I think we put that in the zoning application. The pavement is actually another 35 feet past that.
Okay.
But there is 100-foot setback, and I think in each of the front yards here, which creates 0 building envelope on this property.
Yeah. So the request is simply 2 feet dimensional variance,
Well, plus a special exception to expand the non-conforming.
existing non-conforming.
That's exactly right.
Perfect. I would support the application. I'll make a motion to do that.
Winnie, I have to recuse, correct?
You should, yeah.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Great. Thank you all tonight for your time and your consideration. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the KSB amended Kennett Square Borough amended interim sewage treatment agreement.
So this one was the one in terms of the ongoing representation by John Rice at Grimm Law in terms of his oversight of the Kennett Square Borough and I call it Aqua kind of ultimate sewage treatment agreement that's kind of just been in these interim intervals as they expire. They try to commission and get an extension on another one. At this point in time, the township is nearly a party to the overall agreement, as obviously the sewer sale went through at the end of 2020. So essentially, because there was a historical, we'll call it like a capacity agreement between the township and the borough, and that the actual Aqua kind of treatment facilities exist in the New Guard service area. That's all it is we're just kind of saying, yes, we understand that this agreement is in place. So it's a pretty straightforward in terms of document of understanding that we are even in the actual document that was prepared. We're a joinder in the actual overall agreement. So I don't know if you have any questions, but that's how it was briefed to me by John Rice and his team.
Okay. Okay, so we do have a motion to approve the amended interim sewage agreement, treatment agreement, extension till September 14th, 2023.
And that's with Kennett Square Borough, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, we have the escrow release number 1 from S&P Conveyors at 115 Reese Street. And that's a consideration of a release in the amount of $62,046.97, leaving a balance of $323,910.17. We have a motion to approve the release. I think we have
This is just release for the construction.
Correct. Yeah, this is the.
Nothing to
Pinoni's
do
already
with
provided-
landscaping.
Nothing to do with landscaping, nothing to do with anything. This is just the actual reduction. So if you have any questions about Pinoni's assessment of what has and has not been certified by them in order to release the escrow, please let me know. But the cover letter there provided by our township engineer.
Okay. I'll make a motion, based on the letter from the engineer to release the escrow in the amount of $62,046.97.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, passes unanimously. Next, we have the financial security release number 22 for Hawks Glen by Bentley Homes. And this would be releasing $28,762.82, leaving a balance of $134,686.05. So again, this is independent of the issue that was raised by our resident, but I don't think there's anything special going on about it.
No, it's similar in scope. And this is just another one provided by our township engineer in terms of the recommended release based off the work performed to date.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve that then?
I'll make a motion that we release escrow number 22 in the amount of $28,762.82.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, I don't know what MFEMP stands for, but plans for Laurel.
Mushroom Farm Environmental Management Plan.
There we go. For Laurel Valley Farms and Kale and Mushroom Farms.
So this is just an annual reporting process that as a part of being a grower industry, they have to provide their annual mushroom kind of, we'll call them like farming mitigation type plans. So this is the ones that were submitted from Laurel Valley and Kaolin. If you have any questions, please let me know, but the memorandum is there, so.
We have a motion to approve. Any discussion?
Yeah.
Sure.
Questions, I would say.
I think that's covered. Is that start and stop times? I don't think we can enforce any of
To
that.
my understanding, there's no operating hours contingency in the mushroom environmental farming maintenance plan, so.
Yeah. No.
The acre legislation, acre and the right to farm law really protect farming to the extent that there are no nuisance actions against agricultural uses, and that would be a nuisance action. I'm not saying that, but yeah. You should talk to your state legislator. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
No, composting is agriculture. There's a case right on point. No, I'm saying there is legislation. Absolutely. That's why there are no restrictions on hours in agriculture. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the legislation. Oh, thank you. I would appreciate that. But this is This is a statute by the Pennsylvania legislature that protects agriculture,
And supersedes
Not
the
us.
municipality.
but I'm. It's the Pennsylvania statute considers it agriculture.
Our municipal zoning that is industrial, but regardless of that, they are
Property.
regulated by the Department of Agriculture. So
Yeah.
anything we put, even if it was as strict as
Yeah.
we wanted it to be,
Yeah.
No, they're not breaking the law, sir. I understand your frustration. They're not, the law supports what they're doing, which is.
Mhm.
There you go.
Put farm
It's
exempt on your car before you stuff the body in there,
Yeah.
because no one will pull you over.
Yeah. So this report is clearly to do with their reporting for the Mushroom Farm Environmental Management Plan. And Chris, they've been submitting it as required that you're aware of.
Correct.
Okay.
No,
State of
I
Pennsylvania.
don't think my opinion as to whether it's fair matters.
No.
Mhm. The problem is they got to the legislature first, so that's when she says, talk to your legislator, that's what she means.
With lobbying power.
Yeah, they got they gotta have a 20-year head start on you.
I don't think we want to comment on that either, sir. I said, I don't want this
You
board to
don't.
comment on that either.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the MFEMP plans? No? No motion to approve? Okay,
Yeah, I mean, so we have a motion.
yeah, we have a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Avondale Fire Company Building Permit 23-0122. Consideration of approval to waive fees for the building permit issued to the fire company.
This was pretty straightforward. As we all know that they're a little capital campaign project to build that exterior structure behind the firehouse. It was all grant subsidized. This is just us doing our part to help out minimize expense. The permit fees in totality were $667 assessed against a $26,300 capital improvement project. So essentially, if we have them pay fire permit fees, we are actually billing ourselves because we're the primary funder. So this would just be an approval to waive the fees.
Right. Yeah, I'll make the motion and first I would like to thank the fire company because I know they got a lot of grants and different funding for the project. And I think this is just a small token that we can relieve the $667. So that's my motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, next we have the rental inspection ordinance draft. It's Winnie, I assume, or Chris?
This has got slides.
Chris got slides.
Yes, I'm realizing I might have saved the wrong slide deck here because it's in the packet, but essentially it's a one pager. So what I'm going to try to do here, see if I can. But just at a high level, we're not actually adopting anything tonight. This is more of getting your sentiment of the draft ordinance that was attached to the agenda as another moment in time for board to deliberate on some of the provisions that are actually included within the actual draft ordinance. Understanding that the prior understanding was that we were trying to be as aligned of compliance with health and safety measures, but not including other extraneous type items that we would have very limited ability to enforce or track and manage as the townships, like, resident names, phone numbers, like that kind of PII type information. I mean that by person identifiable information, or, kind of other associated items. So what you have in front of you is an actual, we'll call it, an amalgamation of about 5 or 6 different draft ordinances that we all kind of did an internal review on, and we kind of took the best fits for the township and put them together in that draft ordinance. So right now, and excuse me if I'm trying to bring this thing up to. There you go. Then let me zoom in here real quick. If I can. But here you have the high level rule of what they're going to be provided, categorically broken down by each individual area. So from I don't want to read to the slide here, but did you have any questions about these takeaways from what I consider to be the real meat and potatoes of the actual ordinance and what we would actually be commissioning into a draft ordinance? Excuse me, into the final ordinance that we will bring forward at a future date, probably the July 17th meeting.
No, I've read through it and I think you have basically trimmed a lot of the things some of our neighbors have that really don't apply to our township. And so you've done a good job in taking them out, at least for a starting point. The only question or comments that I had on the ordinance was the fire code. Are we going to move forward with that prior to this or before the implementation of the rental inspection?
In terms of overall active enforcement of them?
Adopting it.
I think even one of my discussions with the fire marshal, we've been kind of looking at the actual registration process of anything that would be underneath each potential ordinance would be the remainder part of FY23 with a tentative effective enforcement date of January 1, 2024, because it's going to take a certain amount of onboarding required to get the actual registration process complete, as well as staff kind of building the actual process for all the workflows, getting technology up and online, getting everyone trained, officially certified would be the primary effort for the next, we'll call them 6 to 7 months. So we're briefing after this, the actual fire code program as well that would be behind this. So you can ask questions about that one at that time, but they would be in sequence with each other because this is all under the lens of having our community development and safety department kind of stood up. This is part of that ramp up effort to get the township kind of right sized to enforce our current property maintenance standards, our existing, but not necessarily consolidated into a fire code type ordinance, as well as a possible rental inspection ordinance should the board choose to adopt.
Do you have questions, Christie?
No.
Any questions or comments, Troy or Ted? Yeah. You guys comfortable with advertising? Or do you want some more time to look over it or? If we advertise it and decide not to, decide we do need some more time, do we need to then re-advertise it or just,
Yeah, I
we
would
can take it up
recommend
and?
Probably not advertising it
Okay.
until make the decision to advertise it in July.
Yeah. If you
Okay.
have further comment that you want to continue to bring forward as you continue to just kind of just review it, what is the date of prior notification prior to more than 7 days?
7
So
days.
July 10th would be our cutoff date for that in order to be in compliance with actually having it on the public agenda on the 17th meeting.
Now, do we feel that this is good enough as a draft to release to the public? Or do we not do that until we actually have a final draft?
I prefer that you not do that because then if there's something that isn't what you have ended up adopting.
Correct.
earlier and it gets very.
It muddies the water.
Yes, it does.
In terms of what's attached to the public advertisement.
Yeah.
Right now, the public has full access by going onto our agenda and reading everything for themselves, as well as the reasons behind the program. So in terms of a transparency effort, everything has been
Is
kind of
upfront.
fully put out there
Yes.
for everyone to review and provide comment if necessary.
So if we were to get final comments to you a week before the next meeting, you could amend it and advertise it then we could vote to advertise.
Hopefully somewhat before the July 10th thing, we'd have to put the whole thing together and then advertise it. So I know that we are coming up to the
About 3
holiday
weeks out.
break
Yeah,
here.
3 weeks really.
We're a week late already.
So
Yeah.
an
on this
effort
meeting.
of aligning our calendars here. If we could get it by the end of the week of the 3rd, we have those days where after 4th of July, so the 5th, the 6th and the 7th. If we could get it by the 6th, that would give staff enough time, the final 2 days to get all the information together. Unless Winnie's looking horrified right now, so.
Or we could just that's, I didn't really contemplate that we are in fact a week
Yeah.
past where we normally meet, plus the 4th of July holiday. So yeah, I think it would probably be best to just let this marinate with the public and consider it on our ends, and then we reconvene in July, think about it, and then we can vote to advertise.
I agree.
Is that good with you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be in line with the August.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna pass on that. And we're gonna move on to the New Garden Township International Fire Code brief.
Correct, yeah. This one I actually did save the actual presentation. I'm pulling it up right now. If anybody can just,
There we go.
you want to be my, just for the first few slides, and then I'll come back to click for Charlie here, but. All right, thank you. So good evening, members of the board, residents, staff. My name is Chris Himes. I'm the Township Manager, New Garden. And tonight we're going to be briefing similar to what we did last time, which is the conceptual overview of what adopting a possible fire code, in this case, the international fire code, kind of like the similar scope of the property maintenance code, because this is an actual contained document dissimilar from the rental inspection, which is kind of a crafted language in an ordinance. We would just be adopting the standards already set forth, nationally adopted standards for an effectual fire code program. So go ahead, next slide. So what is it? It's a set of uniform national standards that would be enforced by a governmental body, in this case, New Garden Township, specifically our fire marshal or certified fire inspection official for the purposes of life safety and fire prevention. So this was what we called another preventative maintenance program that is imbued upon our enforcement staff to go out, in this case, through the commercial component of it, of engaging with our local businesses to be able to do routine anniversary-driven initial inspections and re-inspections to make sure that those kind of basics of, we'll call them uniform fire standards, are provided throughout the actual commercial establishment. So the overview of it is similar to the rental inspection ordinance. Granted, this one is already kind of prefabricated language. We would do the same thing. We would bring forth that actual, and I don't know if this one is a commission hearing or not, or public advertisement, but it would be similar in scope. We just don't have to do a lot of drafting and crafting of the language. We would just say, this is our standard that we're choosing to adopt or not. I wanted to kind of provide an assessment of what does it mean to actually have this program in your township. So similar to how we showed all of the different kind of breaking of units in our area from a residential standpoint for the rental ordinance. This one just shows that we do have a sizable footprint of commercial activity within our township across all different sector types, and inclusive of it's actually prevalent throughout the entire township as well. So it's not just one particular corridor over here, over there. This is across the board, and just gives you an understanding that not only do we have a sizable amount of number of brick and mortar businesses, but also number of employees associated with those businesses. So this is kind of when it comes to the fact that it's in our backyard, it's happening, and this helps us kind of provide life-saving type services for the township. So I would consider this to be a missing component of an overall enforcement program, and one that it helps to have that understanding for the fire department ultimately of when they go into a building, they know that there is a certain kind of preventative maintenance that had been issued on that property beforehand. And that's kind of the preventative side. Next slide. So once again, kind of going back to what does it mean? We're basically ensuring proper protection for our residents, visitors, and property within the township. So we're doing this not only on behalf of the people that might be within the building, working at that time, also adjacent to the building and those businesses in and of themselves. A lot of this is kind of, when you think of a property maintenance kind of function, a lot of this is just education and outreach. Oh, I didn't know I needed that. And we've had some and Charlie will cite some kind of significant examples of going into a business for an unrelated use, seeing a sizable amount of I'll call them compliant, I'll call them issues to say, but cases where we've had to actually work with them to address them. But that is them just saying, yes, we'll try to do that. This would actually make it through an enforcement program that would be more effectual for us to push for the compliance. And then the legal issues and constraints are no different that would occur in terms of our present township code department. So essentially it's the site inspections, the notices of violations, and then the possible kind of court proceedings that would come with a documented case that needs to be escalated for a district magistrate to oversee, and the same appeals process is also entailed. So that's why it's kind of in alignment with the property maintenance standards that we have already adopted. It's a similar type of uniform code. Next slide. And I guess in this case, wanted to kind of overtell like what this means in terms of financial impact to the township. And so in order to have a fire code that you are enforcing, you need fire marshal inspection staff. And our current fire marshal standing in the back of the room has kind of been providing consultation type services through an extension through Avondale Fire Company, but not necessarily a full-time or even part-time dedicated staff on the township. So we would have to ramp up his hour of investment and basically be able to create the program, register everybody, do these active inspections on what we consider to be right now upfront, a 20 hours per week part-time type basis. And so based off of market rate range of fire marshal, we'll call them cost per hour type structure, because it is a part-time position. This was the overall range. I wanted to also provide what a full-time component of this. Charlie, I don't know how long you will always be willing to do this function for the township, but at some point we will have to look at what a replacement strategy behind that is. So before we actually adopt a fire code, it would also be helpful to understand what the near-term and long-term potential cost is for the township. So there you have the numbers kind of in front of you, as well as equipment. And when you're doing these site inspections, similar to when we're doing our property code type inspections, this isn't something where you want staff driving around in their personal vehicles to go onto sites. It helps to have that kind of, I'll call them agency behind you when you're driving around in a township vehicle. And this is not necessarily an extraneous request. This is very standard governmental best practice in terms of having commissioned vehicles for staff to operate and do their daily functions on behalf of the township. So that would be kind of what an equipment type capital cost would look like for the township. Down the road, we are looking at different mechanisms to fund kind of vehicle strategies for the township, because right now we only have one very, very old white Ford Ranger pickup for all town hall related staff. We did actually get the Parks truck. It's currently sitting, is it still up back? But that was the one that was approved for this year. But we still have a sizable gap of having kind of a vehicle program in place to support all township operations that we're trying to ramp up. And so other than that, it's kind of those kind of tangential kind of technical equipment devices that help a person who's operating in the field do field work. Nothing that much off of what like a general labor on our public works department would have. Tablets, kind of connectivity, being able to do workflows in the field for preventative maintenance scheduling, very similar in scope. So the overall cost from a capital perspective is fairly nominal, one that can be easily incorporated into our ongoing vehicle kind of procurement program. And then the part-time rate can also be absorbed both through the remaining part of FY23 as well as the FY24 and beyond. So from a part-time basis, there really is no net impact in terms of additional cost to the township because of some cost savings that we did through the actual budget amendment process that was done this was 2 months ago. We have the room to move into this. So any questions about the cost breakdown? All right, next slide. To stop, no, this is for commercial business. Just commercial business, correct. And at this point, I will turn it over to the field expert. So Charlie.
Yeah, this code that we're talking about right now, we're focusing more on the commercial side of it, residential side now, at this point. A lot of residential stuff is picked up in the building code section itself, which is helpful, but these codes interact with each other. There'll be sections in the fire code that refer back to the building code and vice versa. The building code will reflect back to the fire code. So they're kind of married together. at some point. Okay. Is it? Well, part of this, and it's not listed in any one of these slides, is called common sense, to be quite honest with you. And been in this world for a long time with this kind of stuff, and you gotta be smart about it, and you gotta work with the people. Yeah, there needs to be a final objective. How do you get to it? You know, you give and take. Now, in some of this stuff, there's no give and take because it's life-threatening property, potential property damage. And that's a whole different ballgame at that point. Okay, so with this, these are interior examples of violations that are out there. And I'm not going to go one by any means, but there's 6 of them up here in the interior that I've seen in this township. I see them just about every time I go into a building in some form. I was in a building 2 weeks ago, extension cords running all over the place, underneath carpet, underneath, you name it, it was there. So I've seen these out there. And at this time, the township does not have something to say to the property, to the business owners and or the property who own the buildings. Hey, these things need to be corrected. And here's the reason why. Here's the reason why. On the exterior, big thing is the block fire department connection, valves, hydrants not working. Landscape trees, berms, boulders, and things like that. We've caught some of the landscape issues when we visited a building before it was given an occupancy permit. I found one just close to this building that at the fire department connection where they would connect their hoses to, in case there was a fire to feed the sprinkler system. They were putting bushes in front of it. I said, this won't work because in 3 years, that bush is going to be high and you're not going to be able to find it if you need it at 3 o'clock in the morning. So with that, with these kind of things allows fires to increase in size and slow down the rescue of occupants. So that can slow down a lot of things. Next slide, please. Okay. Prevention measures, fire codes increase fire safety, fire prevention and mitigation efforts equate to firefighter safety. Very simple. The more we can be proactive, the safer it's going to be for these folks to go into a building, whatever situation may be. It may not necessarily be a fire, but it could be a hazardous material incident of some type. We have things in the township that have all these lot of chemicals in there for sale to a normal consumer. Those things can develop into a problem if something goes wrong. Early efforts in fire prevention and mitigation during the construction and or regular inspection of the structure will help shape the battlefield when an incident does occur. At 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can tell you, I've lived in some of this 3 o'clock in the morning stuff. It's hard to understand where stuff is at unless you know ahead of time. And they try to pre-plan as much as they can in the fire department, but it's not necessarily always works out that way. So this is something that would help them. And what I mean by that is that we would take information that we're gathering from the inspections, and then we'd ship it off to the fire department to put into the computer system in the county dispatch center. And in its mobile terminals, all this information will come across where these things are at. So it helps make things go a lot smoother, and also we can get there and take care of things. Okay, next slide. These are examples of things in New Garden Township that I've seen in the last 4 years now. One commercial establishment had 20+ cylinders, 40-pound propane cylinders stored in the basement. Honest to God, straight happened. Incorrect panic hardware installed on doors. I've seen it in commercial structures where the hardware may fail with panic. It's when you push on it, the door opens. They use a rugged turn knob instead. Fire doors blocked in some of the establishments. They're tight for space. So here's a 3-foot wide door. I can put a lot of things in front of it. Gaps in areas where fire stop needed to be installed. Up above the suspended ceilings in a lot of these commercial establishments that you go into, you look up above, there's penetrations in there where over the years, they ran cables, pipe or different things like that go on. And these areas need to be sealed up. We go back 2 years ago when Plaza 2 burned. The fire was contained to one suite. It went up, the smoke went up and traveled across the entire building, giving the fire department the impression that the roof was on fire underneath. And all it was, all the penetrations up above where the walls went up weren't sealed. It caused a lot more damage than it really needed to be there. Smoking areas, that is a big thing that I've seen is that mulch. And I know mulch is nice, but we got to try to have people try to limit where their smoking areas are at. I know we're going to get an industrial site over here soon. Hopefully they'll put it into play, and I'll recommend that they do, that they create a smoking area at least 25 feet away from the building. Deadbolt locks on emergency exit doors. This is in daycare. I just saw this 2 weeks ago. And they said, we wanted to secure the door. I get it. I understand that. But if you have the right panic hardware, which they did, it would have secured the door perfectly fine. Private fire hydrants. There's been two responses that the fire department's been at in the last 5 years that they pulled in. The hydrants were bad. They could not operate. Both times they're within 50 feet of the fire location. And they had to go to a different hydrant to get a water source to take care of the fires. Next one, Chris. The township has a few things in place. We have the burning ordinance. That's if you create a nuisance with burning, you need to put it out. We have fire lanes that have been dedicated and drawings that were presented to the board here and stuff that were in place. Knox boxes, Knox box ordinance went in 2020 went in, right? 21, went in 21. And the other day it paid off finally. There was an incident out at the shopping center where someone came to the place to buy something. The store was closed, but they could see a candle on the inside lit. So the police department got a hold of the fire chief. They went out there, went into the Knox box, put the key out, unlocked the door, put the candle out. So it's hard to say if that wasn't seen, what it would be looking like today. And luckily it worked out well. We can, in ordinances that the township has, we can designate fire lanes if things change within that area. And of course, the false alarm ordinance has been in play for a few years. Okay, inspections without hesitation will always be the prevention of the loss of human life and property. Security for minimized business interruption. Plaza 2 was out for 1 year. 1 year they were out of business in that whole plaza. And some of the businesses did not come back. Dollar General has been out since April 28th. I finally got some phone calls today from the folks, and we're starting to move to get them back, their electric back on and things like that. So that is starting to move a little bit. There should be a favorable insurance rates, reduction in maintenance costs by doing these things a little bit at a time, and doing it so that the cost is not crazy. Because if you let it drag on, it's just like your vehicle. If you don't maintain your vehicle, all of a sudden you're going to have this big cost. Here, we're trying to keep them in smaller increments so that you don't see big costs in repairs and stuff. Businesses that have passed the fire code inspection will definitely give us employees and people that come into that business a little sense of security that they know they're in a safe place. It's also a uniform approach to property conservation. So we're looking at it one way versus all kinds of different ways. Less stress on the current combination fire department. Fire department is a combination department. They take people in the daytime Pay people at nighttime and it's volunteers day and night. That's what it is, no matter how you slice it. Okay. Here's some examples of fees, and this will be up to the board to make that final decision. But for the inspection fees based off square footage, you can see what those numbers are. Public owned educational buildings would be no charge, i.e. the schools. Reinspection would be a cost for reinspection. And then for a fireworks display, would be a cost for that. You check that out. All these kind of things are covered, not necessarily the fee schedule, but the inspection processes are spelled out as what needs to be done in the 2018 fire code. These are just some additional ones. Installation and modification of automatic sprinkler, automatic fire extinguishing system, $50 for the first 1,000, $25 for each additional 1,000, and therefore at least a minimum of $50 going straight, going forward. Same thing for fire alarm and detection systems. That costs. Flammable and combustible liquid tanks. This would include the propane tanks that people have. There would be a fee for that, along with commercial for a certain gallons of size, 5,000 under, 5,000 more. And temporary structures, i.e. tents over 200 square feet, and canopies in excess of 400 square feet. Okay, Chris. So what this finally does, it kind of marriages all those books sitting over there on the shelf together. It puts them all together so that, you know, you look at one book and you can go back to the other if it questions it, and you come up with an answer that this is what the code says, and you try to work with it. Questions? Yes, sir. Yes, residential tanks, flammable combustible liquid tanks. Well, that's a system example. That's not stuff in the board here. Yeah, no, I understand. No, I understand.
Yeah, I would say let's bring it to the board for initial comments on the actual scope of it. I would want to do the board first, and then we can get to public additions, but
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
So what does this do for agriculture? So would we have any jurisdiction on our biggest problem, which is hay storage fires?
There is a section, Robert, correct me if I say this wrong. There is a section in there regarding bulk fiber storage on the outside. It talks about the size. It talks about distances around those materials. I can't quote that right offhand, but I do know that's in there.
And then on the last page, fuel storage. You don't have 10 or 20,000 gallon tanks listed there, but they are in this township.
They are, that's correct. That's something that would have to be added.
So, but would we have the right to inspect them at an agriculture farm? Under the fire code, we're not prohibiting them from doing anything. It's a safety issue. It's an environmental issue. It's a fire hazard. Those are the questions I would like to hear answered. That probably comes under the Department of Agriculture. So any of the processing plants, any of the break rooms and growing rooms, but the growing rooms would be exempted. And that's what I thought. Mhm. So all of our distribution buildings, because I believe that New Garden Township is number one in the United States in distributing mushrooms, and they're all here in New Garden. We would then be able to inspect those under the fire code
For safety,
for safety.
correct. In the growing operation, as Robert said.
Would be
But the
no.
repacking, no, they got to follow that because that is not growing a product
It's distribution.
distribution. That's correct.
Okay, that's all the questions I have, Charlie. Mhm.
There are sections in the code on repairs, places like garages and things like that. I can't quote you anything right now. I have to look it up. But there are some sections in the fire code regarding that. There are certain requirements that need to be met with that.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Chris, Charlie, when does the township desire to have this fire code completed, implemented, finalized?
So it was the express sentiment of the board to at least explore interest in what these programs entail, and that's with the rental inspection ordinance and the fire code. So it does seem like a kind of significant ramp up for the township to kind of proactively implement enforcement programs. And with that, because they are being executed by different teams within staff, we would want to do them at the same time with, I don't want to put dates against the board, but the goal is to try to get them effective by January 1, 2024. So we would start a clean fiscal year with a clean program going forward. But in order to get things going, we would actually need to start with the registration process. And that's actually reaching out, getting engagement, sending out all of the required, information type items and getting, we'll call it like a panel inventory of registered commercial properties as well as registered rental properties. And that's going to be the effort of staff probably from point of adoption, which is probably by the end of the summer, through the end of the fiscal year. Correct. As it was, discussed by the board, they want to explore a 1 month kind of assessment review period for the rental ordinance. And so we would move to potentially adopt at the August meeting, which I think is the 21st, I believe, whatever the third Monday is. I can't remember off the top of my head. And then this one potentially, if we want to bring it forward, because it's a more kind of preordained fire code 2018 code that we would be adopting, we could do that in July's meeting. So it's just dependent upon what the board wants, and we will seek to push those advertisements accordingly.
Yes.
What I heard was it's possibly action to authorize the advertising of that ordinance.
Yeah.
in August.
So the process is we have to advertise for that public advertisement to adopt a rental ordinance no later than 7 days prior to adoption. Essentially, at this point, we're giving like a 1 month advance notice of the advertisement and approval. So anytime between July 17th and August, whatever would be 7 days prior, we would be giving the thumbs up to advertise. No, appreciate that.
So, Chris, the fees that are there would come directly back to the township. Because this is a township.
Correct. So the
administrator.
difference between staff who can execute for a rental inspection ordinance, we have already a pre-established I would say contract, but there are associated building code officials with the BIU, the building underwriters. They would do the bulk order of rental inspections. It's a process they do. They do it throughout southern, Chester County area. They're the experts in getting that program up and running and then actually going through it. It doesn't mean that we can't have staff who are, I don't think you have to have a certification to actually serve as a rental inspection officer, but just in terms of you're an appointed official under the township's designation to perform that inspection. In that way, we can do it. For this one, it's a more specific certification. You need to have a fire certification to be able to actually enforce these on site. So this one would be under the full guise of Charlie as the identified official to start. It doesn't mean that we can't cross-certify other staff members to be able to do this same thing, but the goal would be to keep it in-house. So no split revenues, which is what our associated relationship with BIU is. It's a little different. This is 100% to the township. And those measures are to offset the cost of actually, equipment costs, technology costs, stuff like that. So it's still one where the goal is not revenue, the goal is compliance, because we're never going to have a revenue stream even remotely close to the total amount of operational costs. Granted, as you saw, those costs are somewhat nominal. So it's a very, I would call it modest investment of capacity and funds to be able to create I would call it, consider to be a pretty substantive enforcement program for fire and safety.
Goal is safety.
And not only safety residents, but safety when our fire responds to a building. I mean, you go out and hook up to a hydrant that doesn't work, that's not doing anyone any good.
So with this one, there's no recommendation really on it tonight. It's just, are you interested in pursuing? We would bring this back at the July meeting in this instance, because like I said, there is no crafted language required and we're just motioning to adopt. It does have to be an ordinance. I'm sorry. That's why Winnie is here. So she'll keep me in line with what's brought forward, but whatever is brought forward, you will be within my measure then.
Yeah, for me, I think I would like to see final comments and put it back on the July and potential for advertising for adoption in August, same as the rental.
So put them in sequence with each other in the same time frame. Okay.
That's just me.
I agree.
Good.
Yep. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Okay, now we're moving right along to the ARPA budget proposal update. Oh, the storm's coming.
This is it breaks apart. And we'll run-
Excuse me. And good evening once again, Chris Himes, Township Manager. I'll be briefing the recommended proposal that was discussed as during the website approval process. We talked about remaining funds from our ARPA currently remaining balance, and we would kind of get staff together, synthesize an actual remaining ARPA spending plan that would be embedded as people leaving there, in alignment to the existing FY23 budget. And then there will be some rollover between FY23 and 24, as hopefully everybody in this room possibly understands at this point, all funds have to be earmarked by end of fiscal year 24, with an understanding that all expenditures have to be released by, is it 25, 26? And then that gives us a timeline to get rid of, the remaining balance, but also at any point in time, there's, from my understanding, a national, we'll call it remaining balance of governments that have not expended any of the funds. And so there's pending possible congressional action to essentially redistribute and pull everything back, in which case, if you did have a spending plan and you're just waiting to the last second, procrastinating organizations are not going to be in a great position. So This is one where we would be able to possibly reassess the priorities based off of department input from the normal budget cycle and align that into, I guess I would call it a more purposeful spending plan, specifically so for the remaining ARPA funds. So next slide. Hopefully the power stays on. We've been pretty good with that lately. All right. So the overview, where those funds currently aligned. And so when I came in and did the budget amendment process, we looked into a lot of these projects and we found a lot of them to be kind of numbers that weren't necessarily in alignment with the actual physical construction costs that were associated with the primary three up top there, which was the Mercer Mill project, the Wilkinson Drive project, and the Public Works sinkhole. And so there was a little bit more finding of fact, as well as we had some turnover with our township engineer. We got a reassessment performed. And it turns out that a lot of those cost estimates, as well as the feasibility around those projects, made it so if you just kind of were trying to stick ARPA funding to offset those project costs, not only one doesn't add up to the other, but two, there's some feasibility issues around that that would elongate the ability to get those projects fully realized. And that's where I was saying we start getting into the understanding that we're not able to actually earmark and expend funds on those ARPA timelines. So another one I wanted to show was what we've actually spent to date from ARPA funding that we had prior to the remaining balance. And as you can see, we've already invested a little bit in stormwater related type issues. So we have, 415,000 balance that was spent on the commission stormwater improvement project as through the PennDOT relationship. But if we were to do that, we would basically have aligned all of our remaining fundings on stormwater related issues. And so one recommendation that I try to make sure is fully understood is kind of a balanced distribution for both internal and external organizations. And to date, nothing has been kind of fully looked at for internal improvements for our own organization as a township. So the recommended plan that we're going to explore here is going to be kind of trying to do as much as possible all across the board. So just in terms of a Mercer Mill update, that was one that's kind of been back and forth in terms of public agenda items, as well as different staff inputs from the township engineering perspective. The one that Pannoni recently provided to me is the one that is a kind of a synthesis of all factual realities about that project. And what that does is it kind of brings the cost dramatically down based off of the feasible scope of work that we could actually perform in the area to do as much as humanly possible. So the issue with that project, it was essentially it came to fruition because there was a significant back-to-back kind of 300-year type storm events that kind of showed that this is a risk area, mostly associated with private property as a result of overflow from our kind of culvert area right there along Mercer Mill Road. And so based off of Pannoni's recommendation, they're showing what their scope would entail. And as you can see, that kind of brings the actual cost estimate downward pretty precipitously. The other part that I was directing Pannoni to provide was if we pare down the cost, can we also find a viable grant funding to completely offset the cost of the projects, like unearmark it for ARPA funds, use grant funds against it. This is where that pros and cons kind of came in terms of their professional understanding a project with the scope, because it's not a regional kind of based project. It's more for a scoped project for individual properties. They're not necessarily that successful for grant approvals. And this was just a few of them that were kind of aligned with this type of project. It doesn't mean it's completely non-grant viable. It's just in terms of their immediate assessment of it. So we could continue to try to seek grants to offset it, but it's not necessarily a fully vetted strategy that would have a guaranteed type outcome. I'm not saying any grant is guaranteed, but one that would be deemed to be highly successful. In terms of the Wilkinson culvert update, this is one that I got a pretty good rundown from not only our Public Works Department, but the commissioned engineer to look at it, which was Cedarville. And they were the ones that said that in terms of an actual culvert, it's not necessarily the one that's the priority risk in terms of all failing culverts within the township. And it's one where there's kind of a blockage issue, not necessarily the structure in and of itself failing. So it's not one where the pipe is kind of a corroded metal corrugated pipe. And so the key takeaway is it's sustainable for now. Obviously, I don't want to, a big storm coming here right now, but it's one where we also don't necessarily have it as the highest critical need even in of itself. So that one would be, if you wanted to continue to pursue that, we would possibly un-earmark it for this culvert, maybe reassess a few other ones out there that may or may not be higher in scope. So this just might be the one that makes the most sense based off of the palatable amount. But if we're commissioning ARPA funds to invest in actual strategies, the goal is to have larger outcomes provided for longer term use. This one would be more of like a, a short-term type investment for maybe a low yielding type of function. So maybe not in terms of recommended, we'll call it longer term achievable outcomes based off of doing more holistic improvements in the township. And then the Public Works sinkhole project, a significant part of this is actually under PennDOT right of way. So we are a consumer of that project, not the driver of it. And so that's one where we would have to actually get them to associate their stake in actually doing anything because of its where it is on Route 41. So we could be at this for years if we actually want to, because if we just looked at our side, we're not actually doing anything to improve the site. So it's one where it doesn't really make sense then to completely align it with potential ARPA funding if there's no guarantee right now other than getting PennDOT to push for their replacement of the failing side of that culvert in and of itself. And it's one where, Kenny's kind of looked at it continuously because it's part of an ongoing issue on that side of the right of way. But it's not one where it's gaining momentum. It's just kind of stable as it is right now. So what I wanted to propose was if we were to look at those projects and say, theoretically remove them completely from that, it's roughly about 697,000 remaining balance of ARPA funding. What does a replacement funding plan look like? And so when I talked about balanced slicing of the pie and organizational improvements, I'm going to try to get some of those other ones that we have kind of de-emphasized or deprioritized, and not necessarily because they weren't important, but because we had to make those kind of decisions between viability on projects. The one that would kind of a balanced approach towards, I would say, addressing other areas of need for the township. A big one right now is we have kind of a misalignment of our staff kind of doing functions that aren't necessarily in alignment with what they were hired to do right now. In terms of short term, that works well. In terms of long term, people become less, incentivized to continue doing it. That would be where we would address that with a near-term funding plan that would have in alignment with the possible economic revenue increases from the proposed project we have in land development in 25 for a modest increase to get a staff member in place to serve as that long-time permit coordinator that we do not have right now. We have someone who is covering. And then this person would also be kind of a financial clerk analyst type position that their primary objective would be grants administration, grant writing, essentially a lot of kind of grant management. And this was a function that was prior filled by a staff member that left the township. I think it was a few years ago, actually. And so another one was just a replacement of that same staffing level that we haven't recovered from. This would be able to fund that through ARPA for the next remaining 16 months. And then in FY25, we would move it to the general fund to continue having that same capacity that we have, that we had previously. And we have found that loss of grant management, escrow management, permit tech coordination, it's kind of left our office kind of administration efforts kind of skewed one way or the other. This is one where it helps kind of improve that, and we can actually right size a lot of, we'll call them missing hours dedicated towards performing I would call them required services within the township. Another one is our overall facility type improvements. So right now we have, I would consider to be very loose controls from a facility standpoint when it comes to just security. We have keys in terms of do not duplicate kind of function attached to them. We provide these out for public use for rentaling facilities. So essentially when it comes to a control mechanism, there's no real solid control mechanism in place. This is I would consider to be a very consistent measure to take across all local governments nationwide in terms of investing, if they hadn't already had to date, CARES and ARPA funding to address ongoing facility access type issues. And this is one that would actually have, I consider to be it would be a very low scale of work required to actually get us up and compliant with what I consider to be basic security access best practices, if you will. So it would basically be like a photo ID key card type program that we would commission in place. And therefore, there's a chain of custody in terms of who is accessing your building, understanding when it was. And this would be complementing our already commissioned security camera type program. So we've already invested in that. This would kind of be a complementary piece in our public facility. As well as other, I'll call them kind of OSHA type standards. From everything I understood from PSATs was there was going to be a pending OSHA measure being enforced upon all municipal agencies within Pennsylvania. And with that, you have to adopt OSHA standards. Right now, in terms of our office workplace, we don't offer any sort of, call them basic level, modern kind of workplace type understanding of is it or is it not OSHA compliant. So from a workforce compensation kind of measure, it provides a little bit of risk. So this is one where we would have people have the ability to, if they wanted to have different type of chair, or variable desk or something like that, pretty standard measure in the modern workforce. Some other ones for software improvements. So this is one where service delivery, if you have a small staff, better tech always helps in terms of processing information. Right now, essentially everything is manual, everything is paper-based, and that elongates timelines as well as it increases timelines for audits. Basically being able to deliver better, more enriching reports to have a good assessment of what's actually going on. And my preference in terms of being a more metric-driven organization, this allows staff to actually capture sizable amounts of information, synthesize and craft better enriching reports, both to drive internal decision-making and through up to the board of supervisors to make better decisions overall as a whole. So some things that we don't have right now that are already embedded within our system, so we don't have to go find a new system. We just have to commission non-active modules within our current system. For a pretty nominal expense. The bulk majority of the Cassell budget item is actually for the licenses, and that's a one-time cost. The actual reoccurring cost is significantly lower than that. It's about 10% of the overall amount there overall. So ARPA being usable for capital expenses, not for ongoing maintenance. This is for the capital side to actually purchase and procure all of those associated systems. So FA is fixed assets, DP is direct pay. Okay. And then asset management. So these are those kind of interior things that help us kind of process administratively information through our Cassell system and actually attach, kind of call it like an accountability measure within the system as well. So like I said, in terms of improving our internal reporting capacity, that would consider to be a very, I'll call it, for administrative processing, lucrative investment of our energy and effort from a budget standpoint. Civic Plus, we already approved that measure, so there is no other real kind of input I have on that one. That's just what the assessed cost is against it. And then another one is for, I listed a program there, but essentially outside of Cassell is historically a financial management system, not necessarily a community development information processing system. So it does some things great, other things not very well. It is pretty standard to have kind of a dual approach. In fact, multiple organizations I've been affiliated with have several different types of kind of call them central ERP systems. One for a community development department that can help essentially process all land development type information, permits, inspections, enforcement agencies. As we ramp up enforcement, we're going to need better processing capacity, as well as this would also suffice for our work orders for our actual public works department as well. So being able to actually have a central superintendent commission work orders out to our field agents to go in there, do the actual work, and have it be system captured is another function that we are working outside of a system right now. So it's just, it's a better processing environment for us. Trying to think if I forgot anything with the actual, bless you. Another part of this is front-facing components to it. So right now, our current system has some alignment with some of these functions, but there's no front-facing part of it. So you can't have residents just go online and submit a permit application. So those digital services are not there, nor they are going to be there, especially within the ARPA timeline to use funds against that to purchase these. So this would be another one where we're increasing our, we'll call them online offerings to be able to do transactions with the township and not make everything extremely paper-based, which, as you said, if you have a pretty lean staff, it makes for issues with data entry errors, missing of timelines. It requires a significant amount of effort to manually track everything. Some other ones, and just in terms of high performance type workstations, I don't know if it's considered to be a best practice on the private sector as much as it is in my familiarity with it in the public sector, but by having kind of the dual monitor docked kind of standard workstation to do a significant amount of work, especially from a finance or administrative processing standpoint, budgeting, you name it. It helps to have kind of that standard kind of approach towards workstation environments. This would actually fund that entire replacement strategy as well. And then another one, and we'll be briefing it, and John will provide the holistic update here, but right now, as a public facility improvement project, there is a gap in terms of what was previously covered by the actual the bill funds associated with the terminal project and what was considered to be grant viable versus non-grant viable. And what that did is our 5% local share for that grant to be enacted due to some contracting type issues created a gap of non-grant funding. And so we have to cover that gap, considering it is a terminal improvement project for public access, specifically ADA type measures. It is considered to be a revenue replacement component for ARPA funding. And it would be my recommendation that we do invest into that in order to be able to get the grant funding for that project, because without that, the grant becomes insolvent and we can't actually do the project in and of itself. And this would be a way to not commission township cash against it. It is our ARPA funding that would actually go into invest into that project for the improvement. And this would be for ongoing public use. Next slide. So we do have some options here. And this is one where I said before, just theoretically think of completely getting rid of all of our culvert projects. This one is a consideration. So right now we have two projects that are of the exact same price against that proposed budget summary. One of them, as you already heard, was the Mercer Mill project. The other one, if you're familiar with, the fuel farm replacement that needs to occur at our public works facility. This allows us to kind of document and process all gas, oil, and lubricant costs commissioned out to all the different departments, including police and fire. I think police have kind of, the current system has failed to a point where it's actually not really viable for that kind of same function. In fact, Kenny, you can correct me if I'm wrong. At any point in time, it's just going to be gasoline in the ground that we'll have to pull out. It's the pumping. Correct. So this is just another example of an aging piece of infrastructure that if we had this moment and opportunity time, it would help the organization as a whole, but you would have the option to weigh kind of the pros and cons for each initiative as well. But if you have any kind of other clarifications that if we go to a question and answering timeframe, let me know. But that is a measure that we don't have to recommend for tonight. This would be one if you wanted to hold on that, if you didn't have a consensus of which one you wanted to invest in, to let me know and we'll come back with that. So with that, unless these two options, the total thing that I'm trying to get a sentiment to enact is going to be the reallocation for those $426,101 for all of the strategies on the previous slide, less the options 1 and 2. And then that'll give us to a spending balance of about $41,000 to $46,000 remaining on our ARPA funding. And this would be something that if we were to amend and implement, we could actually start on these projects right away to make sure that we're staying within the spending timeline. Next slide. I just want to talk about other considerations that we addressed, because I wanted to make sure that we were looking at everything. And another one was that sizable Chester Water Authority mainline extension into New Garden Hills. That one is one where the scope of that cost has substantively increased to do the entire mainline extension. Our Parks and Recreation Superintendent will be here next month, all kind of associated consulting kind of inputs aside, to rebrief the entire kind of phase concept for New Garden Hills. But a significant part of that to activate it is, how do we fund the New Garden Hills water servicing into the actual property in of itself? And as you can see, even just doing the hub component of it, which is that from Route 7 into where the actual the castle exists, is the same amount of almost the entire remaining amount of remaining ARPA funds. So essentially, if you wanted to fund that project, it would be basically saying we're just going to reinvest all the money towards that. Because everything is kind of in sequence, you wouldn't be able to do anything without that first. So it only makes sense to start there. So that is the kind of the cost, we'll call it domino, that needs to be knocked down first before all other dominoes associated with the park to be completed. And so you can see a total dollar amount there at the end of roughly about just shy of $3 million to do the entire servicing component of it. This will be brought into, like I said, the brief for next month about the entire kind of site in and of itself and what the updated associated costs are with that prior kind of architect plan, master plan versus a reassessed kind of cost engineering analysis provided for the entire park. And so staff recommendation for this one is going to be, this one is more pursuable for grants. There was a 1.3 associated $1 million type cost associated with this project for everything. That was pursued through a grant utilizing Pinoni. And it came back that the grant was not approved. And usually when you do a grant review, you kind of look at what was the winning strategy, and all associated grant projects were kind of no higher than that $400,000 to $500,000 threshold associated with that grant. So we would have to basically say, we're going to try to do this in chunk installments over the course of a few years to get the entire service line extension provided. But it all starts with that welcome hub component of it. Next slide. So the renew strategy, just to kind of show about the balanced slicing of the pie. This is one is where, as an organization, we're continuing to invest in our staff to give them better resources and equipment to be able to do their jobs. And so that's a big part of what are we commissioning? Well, we're getting better ability to research grants, process permit applications, improve our customer service, increase our operational resilience by having multifaceted staff kind of commissioned to do a lot of different functions within the township. As all of our administrators are right now, we wear many hats. This would be another person wearing several hats. And still it's understanding that even if we add this potential official with ARPA funding, we are still behind the curve when it comes towards staff capacity for general administrative functions, inclusive of kind of everyone that's here at Town Hall. Another one is just updating and addressing some of our ongoing ocean security type requirements. That's why we would be doing those improvements to be able to offset those liabilities to the township. Another one is just technology, the use of it and the processing of information through it can better abate a lot of, I'll call them, higher level outcomes when it comes to our ability to report better financial transparency. I kind of glossed over it, but that Cassell component, which is the budget component, Cassell as an ERP is a financial management processing system, but we never commissioned the budgeting apparatus of it. So all of our budgeting existed outside of Cassell. So this would be ability to activate it as a module tool within Cassell to do not only the administrative budgeting process, but also all those kind of rich budget book materials, those things that we put on board in terms of a live representation of our township's finances, which from a transparency perspective is I would consider to be a critical priority. And then everything else that we went over in terms of abetting staff to do their jobs more efficiently. Next slide. So what I'm proposing tonight is adoption of only the recommended items for approval for that total balance. And there's the breakdown. Consideration, and we can bring this back to adopt an actual considered plan between these two. And then with that, we'll have 24 remaining balance for some remaining projects. I only named a few here, but this would be through the FY24 budgeting process. And that would be a couple different initiatives that would be top of mind. One of them would be digitizing our kind of current document inventory, all our land management information, everything associated with our financial, call them retention programs. This would be a moment in time that we could commission a project to actually fully digitally document and then store. And that allows us to have kind of like a shared database potential, which helps from a reporting standpoint, a right to know perspective, you know, all those kind of public transparency type initiatives that helps us be a little bit more efficient with that. Sometimes I'll get a right to know request. We have our 5-day window, and I just know on day one that's a 30-day extension because there's just no way we're going to find all the information in time because we have to go sort through the kind of you've seen in the basement our document kind of storage area, and it's a very tedious process. Plus, we have no dedicated staff to actually do those. We have to pull them off of current work to do those extensive reviews as well. So providing some sort of self-service capability, that would be a benefit to the township. Another one we consider with that is, like I said, the Wilkinson Drive project can still be done through some of the usage of the ARPA funding. And if that's something that you are still interested in, we would essentially make that a 50% cost with a possible grant subsidy associated with it. So it still can be fully subsidized. And then other projects as they identified. I actually would, I spoke to Acting Chief Greenwald at Southern Chester County Regional Police, and part of it would be to fund their replacement for their current Cassell operating footprint, which is hosted on our township server. As you remember, when we talked about migrating the server, it's still hosted there. So we still have a server input. It's not in the regional police's budget, but we do all their financial administration anyway. So this is one where by improving their infrastructure, it helps us administratively. So, and it's prorated for the remaining year balance to do that. So right now, as of about a month ago, it was assessed to be $3,000 in cost. If we wait a little bit longer in the year to a certain point, it would be right around that kind of nominal cost, roughly 2,000 to 3,000. And we can actually add that to the spending plan if you want to, if that's something that you're interested in. And I think that's it. Next slide. All right, any questions?
I think you did a great job pulling all that together.
No, it was a 1 month turnaround to tell staff what their dream sheets would be. And everyone came forward pretty quickly to kind of identify some initial needs. This had been stuff that had been kind of brought up in prior capital planning discussions. So these weren't just coming out of nowhere. They were already deemed to be priority replacements. And this doesn't, like I say, right now, handicap us at all to not prioritize those culvert projects. It just allows us to kind of address certain needs and then consider the options with some of those other sizable stormwater culvert type projects that we had already identified.
Any questions from the public? No? Okay, so you want us to look at approving the $430,961 and then making a decision on options 1 and 2, and then we can consider
Yeah.
the remaining.
I would just say if there is a sentiment right now of which option you do or do not prefer, or you can review that, have a little bit more time to look at. And what I can do is provide the some more well, we already have it on book here, but I'll re-provide the materials pertaining towards the Mercer Mill projects. And you can just kind of build a sentiment, and we can, once you provide me that information, we can bring it back for final adoption in July if you need.
Okay.
But I
well,
was saying I'm only recommending that balance amount for the total amount for approval for tonight. And that allows us to, the biggest need is going to be this one, because this one's the primary sensitive one. And then if you, that's the only required item, because that's one where we have a project waiting construction viability against that. The other ones is if you don't feel like it's a justified use or you want to continue to mold it, we could actually itemize all those out. But if my recommendation is those are, we have a plan against the other ones. So it would be to.
Okay, let me see what I can do about getting some answers. So I'm leaning towards option 1 for the fuel farm replacement, because I think it would be helpful to get us separated from the police and get them a bill as to what they're using, as much as I would. I think Mercer Mill should be, the first thing we probably work on in terms of spending our own general fund money towards that, because that's a big issue. I'm excited to know that it's significantly less than what we initially thought. But I know.
Correct.
that-
Yeah, we've
that
done,
if-
and
if-
I've
if
done
someone's
several
coming in-
walkthroughs of the property with the actual owners up and down Mercer Mill Road, as well as finally getting Pinoni to deliver the sentiment there. And it's one where there's a risk associated even with doing that project. So not saying it's a home run and it's going to day one completely revitalize the issue. They could get another insane weather event and it could actually wipe away everything in one fell swoop. So there's a risk associated with any sort of infrastructure project.
Right.
So I don't want to say that even if we do invest ARPA or township funds towards that, it still could yield a negative outcome because it might not actually fix or address the issue.
Sure.
So
Yeah. But I mean, I think with someone new coming in to look at the Landenberg store and kind of jumpstart that.
It does, yeah, it does kind of impact
Just
downstream right
not to
now,
have
all the
rocks there every
confluences
time
to
it
do
rains?
that. Kind of, it's a basin area towards the very bottom of the road on the opposite side associated with the HOA. This would help improve that, which improves some possible runoff type issues. So we're going to try to pull that into scope a little more so and kind of continue to research grant opportunities with that. But their initial assessment was as a project in and of itself, just to do those kind of site restorations with those type of grants, that wouldn't be a successful strategy.
Okay. How are you guys feeling about options 1 versus 2? You have an opinion? You want to mull it over? You want to do? Okay. Troy? Troy? Okay. Steve?
Yeah, and I would also include the server.
Oh, yeah, so that would bring the 41 at the lowest amount down to 38 and change. So we would add that to the plan. So we would put 433 as the approved balance. If you want to change it to that, feel free, but that would cover the cost of that migration effort. And Joe would be very thankful.
Okay, so can we get some approval to spend the $430,961 and then we'll think about options 1 or 2?
So, and I would say the $433,961 to include the regional police
Okay,
server replacement. That was one where they had 17K earmarked just to get a new server to
sure.
do the same thing. We're basically saying we're going into a full cloud. This would help them go as much as possible full cloud as well. And as we are still the administrative moment arm for them, this helps us as well as it helps them.
Okay, so $433,961. Get a motion for that?
I'll second the amended motion.
Okay, all in favor for the amended motion? Say aye. Aye. Okay,
And then on the other issues, if we can just put it on the agenda.
Correct. I'll bring that back and it'll just be a final recommended approach to which option you want to proceed with. And that'll give us even more time to continue looking at other kind of grant offsets for each one potentially, but most notably the stormwater one.
okay, great. All right,
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Okay, moving along to the airport terminal improvement project.
Okay, good evening again. John Martin, New Garden Airport. I'm here to talk tonight, 9:15, about one of the most important aspects of the airport facility, and that is the restrooms. The search for a plan to come up with how to renovate our bathrooms at the airport has been a couple-year process. If we can go to the next slide. This is the current photo of the outside of our aviation center. The white building, the sort of lean-to inside there, that houses our pilot's lounge and the women's and the men's restroom. The little area off to the right of there, the blue bump out from the main hangar, that's our HVAC room where all the heating and cooling equipment are stored. Go ahead. This is the HVAC room currently. This was actually, this photo was taken this morning. We have a little bit of a bird problem inside. The equipment is fairly new, but it is very cheaply constructed. It's essentially a pole barn style construction where the birds have made their way into it over the years. This is our what we call our well room. This is where the water comes into the airport. Fortunately, over the last year, we were able to put new public water into the airport facility, which we received a grant on, which was a major improvement. A lot of this equipment is no longer utilized, but part of this terminal improvement project will do away with the equipment that's not utilized and bring us new equipment in to replace the tanks that we need to have. Okay, next slide, please. This is our entryway into the aviation center, the airport offices, the flight school, our meeting room, all the business side of the airport is done through this door. In order to go to the women's room, stoop off to the right through the pilot's lounge and then into the bathroom. The men's room is the white door on the right. It's been adequate bathrooms over the years. I believe they were built in the late 60s, early 70s. But our current employee staff and our tenant base, it's certainly not adequate, nor does it currently meet ADA standards. The little stoop that you have to step up to go to the ladies' room is a severe tripping hazard where people do trip usually weekly. So it's certainly an issue that needs to be dealt with. This is just a door of the women's room, and you can go ahead and see inside. The width of the door, again, it's not ADA compliant. If we have somebody that comes out to the airport, we run several events normally throughout the year. But if somebody shows up in a wheelchair, we do have to tell them to go down to the handicap porta potty that we have on site. So it's a little embarrassing. Again, it's worked over the years. It's just currently the airport has evolved and it's time to currently look at our restrooms. The men's room, this door is right across from our front desk at the airport. It's not very private, and Tammy and Madison can give you firsthand knowledge of that. But again, the access is limited. There is another little stoop. And then the last photo just shows the inside. And this is the men's bathroom. The proposed terminal project, this will demolish that white bump out off the north side of the hangar. And it will include a 20 by 80 foot addition to the hangar, which will bring new modern bathrooms, ADA compliant bathrooms, a new pilot's lounge, a larger pilot's lounge, as well as a public use office space for the flight school and transient pilots. New HVAC closet. Our existing equipment is planned to be replaced. Again, the heaters are fairly new. The AC system is fairly new as well. So, and this is a schematic drawn up. The question is, how do we pay for this? And until 2 years ago, we kind of scratched our heads. We looked at options. Because it is a public use facility, the township has a requirement by the Separations Act that we have to abide by, where we have to bid this project out using multiple prime contractors. So instead of just one contractor, we have to work with a contractor for the HVAC, the plumbing, the electric, and the general contractor. The difficulty is, being a grant funded project, there's a lot of paperwork associated with it. So it's not a big enough dollar value project for the bigger contractors that are used to dealing with grant funded projects. And it's a small enough project. However, the local contractors that we would normally like to attract to be working at the airport, they shy away from it because of the grant requirements and the amount of paperwork that's necessary. But in 2022, last year, end of 21, the bipartisan infrastructure law came into play, which will give airports a certain amount of dollars every year over the next 5 years of discretionary funding, non-discretionary funding that we can utilize. And in fighting with the FAA, these funds are allowed to be used for terminal improvements, for ADA, to make things ADA compliant, and for electrical efficiencies. So after many go-arounds, this project was approved by the Bureau of Aviation to use these federal dollars as a reimbursement for the project. So with their approval, we actually bid this project twice. This is the second go around. We were able to attract good bids, though they were more than what I would expect, but good bids nonetheless on all of these areas except for the HVAC. But the HVAC is such a small component part of this project because it's really just removing of our existing equipment and reinstalling the existing equipment when the project is completed. In your packet tonight, I believe you have a staff recommendation which shows the bid results. The bid results for the general, the low bid, the general construction was from a company by the name of F.W. Howder Inc. for $643,248. Again, we did not receive anything for the HVAC component, but the plumbing low bid was also F.W. Howder Inc. at $109,750. And then for the electrical was Lanai Electric Corporation at $134,343, making the contract total $888,341. This project was determined by the Bureau of Aviation as 93.9% eligible for this bipartisan infrastructure law funding, which is wonderful news for us because it essentially means that out of this, the total cost of this project is $987,841 minus the HVAC costs. Out of those dollars, the bill grant will fund $834,823. The state share, which is the Bureau of Aviation's 5%, is $46,379, which leaves our local share, which does not include the HVAC costs, at $106,639. So that is our 5% plus the difference between 93.9% eligible and 100%. If you include the HVAC costs, and we're proposing that at about $41,000, and that is just an estimate, we can work with a local contractor on a time and material basis, hopefully to keep that cost down. That brings the grand total of $1,028,841. So I have two motions this evening for the board, if you want me to go into those, or if you have any questions specifically about the bathrooms.
Any questions? No? No, go ahead.
Okay, the first motion would be that the Board of Supervisors authorize the township manager to award the contract 2023-01 general construction to F.W. Howder Inc. in the amount of $644,248. Contract 2023-03 plumbing to F.W. Howder Inc. in the amount of $109,750. And contract 2023-04 electrical to Lanai Electric Corporation in the amount of $134,343. Again, the total contract amount is $883,341. If you add the the engineering fees of $99,500, that equals $987,841 and total contract for the project costs. And $881,202 of that will be reimbursed through 22, 23, and 24 bipartisan infrastructure law grant funding and the Bureau of Aviation's 5% share. Motion number 2 this evening, that the Board of Supervisors authorize the township manager to utilize $147,639 of ARPA funds to cover the airport's local share. That's 5% at $106,639 of the bill grant and anticipated HVAC costs of $41,000 for removal and replacement of the existing equipment.
Just for clarification, we've already approved the ARPA funding. under the option one?
We did.
We did.
Yes.
So we're good on that. So the
Yeah.
only thing we would have to do would be to authorize the manager to award the bid specs.
Correct.
My question would be the reimbursement from, is there a time schedule on that? Is there steps that they need to
That's actually-
complete, John, before?
So in many discussions with the Bureau of Aviation, so there's two parties, you got the FAA and the BOA. These funds will be coming from the FAA. They will come down to the Bureau of Aviation, just like all the other grants, and will be a reimbursement. The work for this project that's been done already, all the engineering fees will be reimbursed, and the work that will be completed will be reimbursed. As far as the date on when those funds will come, we look to start seeing those funds in August. But there is a little bit of unknown as far as on the exact timing of the reimbursement. But in the Bureau of Aviation's words is that the funds are there and will be reimbursed. It's just a matter of when they're trying to get some clarity from the FAA.
Okay.
But again, these are 22, 23, and 24 funds.
Right. Okay. So I'll make the motion to approve the manager to award the bid specs for the qualified low bidder for the airport projects as our airport manager previously read.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
He did. He stayed a little after 9.
That's correct. It's the entire width. In order to redo the bathrooms to make them ADA compliant and get rid of the non-standard step, that whole area, it's a slab that has to be ripped up. And then the fix would be to go the whole width of that hangar, which is 80 feet wide, to be able to incorporate an HVAC closet, a water closet, the bathrooms, and then the pilot's lounge. The classroom slash office slash public classroom, yes. Yeah, and that will have access on the west side of the ramp. So there'll be another entryway from the tie down ramp into the aviation center. Yeah, we all have. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the Buttonwood Road and Broad Run Road intersection and advertising the ordinance change.
Good evening again. In your packet, there was the information regarding this. The Traffic Safety Committee was contacted back in early 2023 about the intersection of Broad Run, Buttonwood, and Sonesta Court. Currently, it is a stop controlled intersection for Broad Run and Sonesta, but it is open to Buttonwood to be able to go both directions without stopping. From looking at it internally and then having McMahon look at it, they recommended upgrading this intersection to a four-way stop due to sight distance concerns and the grade and the overall speed, since they're not doing the 25 miles an hour. Basically. So that is where we are at with that. If you guys have any questions.
It was also reviewed by the Southern Chester County Regional Police Representative who works with us on the Traffic Safety Commission. And essentially, at this point, they've done all proactive enforcement in terms of sitting in that area to cite moving violations. It's a desired outcome for people who are living with this in the area to calm the measure going through that area. And at this point, it's if we can't put a physical stoppage kind of component to them, the issue will continue. And the broader one is just the fact that it's obviously a residential area. This is just to get people to stop. So.
Right.
So the fact that it's at the end of Broad Run Road means that we don't have to do anything about the state. I guess it's already stopped, so we're just Putting stop
This is
signs on-
this is our side. This isn't the state side of Broad Run.
Right.
So we maintain Broad Run from Newark all the way to Buttonwood. They maintain it from Newark all the way out past the other end of Buttonwood and into London Britton Township. So that this section is ours. So we do not have to, we still have to follow PennDOT's guidelines, but we do not have to contact them about implementing this. The only thing we have to do is change the ordinance, which this starts the process of that for Winnie to rewrite the ordinance that has all of our stop intersections in it and then advertise it. And then next month we can actually vote on it. That is correct, right? Okay.
Are we responsible for the culvert that's on Broad Run that's exiting Somerset, just south of Whitney Court?
The Broad.
If you're leaving Somerset.
Right
heading to
before you get to
Wilkinson
those
Farm?
S-Bends.
Yeah,
Yes.
so we have to pay for that?
Is there something wrong with it?
No, I just,
Oh,
I would honestly like to blow it up because that would stop the speeders.
what? That is very true. Yes, it would.
Okay, I will make the motion to advertise to amend Article 2, and all of this, of course, is contingent upon the solicitor's review and advertising and move for adoption for the next Board of Supervisors meeting.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I guess this is also Kenny.
Yep.
2023 Ford F-350.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and then this is the 2023 utility body for the chassis that was ordered in early January. We've been working with a number of vendors to determine what the best bang for our buck is. We could get it slightly cheaper by like $1,000 by going with parting out the work, like one company put the body on, one company do the lights, and then another company do other upfitting. I don't like that idea. I'd like to go back to just one place that does it all, and then everything's covered and we don't have to run into the issue of, well, they did this after we did that, so we're not covering it or anything like that. And this was budgeted for, and we are still within budget.
Okay.
It's still under budget.
It is still under budget,
Okay.
yes.
I'll make a motion to buy the other half of the truck in the amount of $23,214, and that's a not to exceed amount.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. And then
Thank you.
Bancroft Road Bridge replacement, once again.
Yep. Yeah. So as you guys know, back in April, we bid this out for construction now, basically. We did not get any bidders, so we rebid it in May. We did get a couple bidders, and we are at the point of
No return.
point of no return and getting this replaced. Here's a couple pictures of the existing. It's a very narrow roadway. It's like a lane and a half, so cars have to stop as they're approaching. They don't have enough room to pass. It's on a little bit of a curve, which makes it an issue. You can see that picture on the top right. There is some undermining, which they call scouring, along with some pretty significant cracks in the wing wall. And then the two bottom pictures show the exposed metal beams that are rotting and rusting and corroded and everything. And then doesn't really show you much, but that is the new structure. It's going to be, it's completely precast concrete, so it has no exposed beams that have to worry about in the future. It will have 2 9-foot travel lanes, along with a 2-foot grass shoulder on each side. So if we do need to widen the road at some point, or a developer needs to widen the road, that can be fairly easily done. It has a 100-year life expectancy, so I am not going to have to worry about it. I don't think anybody in this room is going to have to worry about it. It will have improved safety along with because of the wider roadway. It'll have compliant guide rail. Right now, it's just a hodgepodge just to keep people from falling in it as best they can. It'll have better sight line, and then it'll have improved capacity for stormwater. So it will have less chance of it backing up and flooding the existing roadway. The advanced signs are already out. As of right now, they're planning to start July 5th, right after the holiday. We will work notifying emergency services The school's already been notified. It shouldn't really affect them because it's planning to be open before the school year next year. As long as everything goes right. Just a quick rundown of what they are expecting. They're gonna, once they get everything out there for the detour and all that, they will close the road. They'll take about a day to do vegetation clearing. There's some small trees that need to come out. There's also some fairly large trees they're going to try to save as best they can and work around them if they can. The erosion and sedimentation controls, which is the silt fence and stuff like that, will take 2 days to put in. The stream bypass pumping will take 2 days. A lot of this will be kind of hand in hand. So while it says 2 days, it's a day and a half here, day and a half there, or whatever. They will remove the old structure. They're planning on that taking about 5 days. With the Bancroft, the proposed Bancroft townhouse project on the modern mushroom property at 152 and 156 Bancroft Road, I believe it is. We are having a sewer line casing installed, which is basically just a large sleeve underneath the structure. We've been working with the engineer for that project, our engineer, and Aqua to get all the specs on that. I think they just got that late last week. So that'll be going, and that will be paid for by that contractor. So that's not really an additional charge to us. They're planning on that taking 2 days. I think it's 20 feet deep as it's below the entire structure footings and everything. Then they'll bring a crane in and set and pour the footers. There's going to be 8 big concrete footers, and then they're going to pour it into 2 individual ones on the outside of the structure. That'll take 3 days. They'll set the structure and the wing walls. That'll be an additional 3 days. Both of those sections will be with the crane. Then they'll start backfilling, which will take 5 days. Once the backfilling's done, they can take the pump out and let the stream flow correctly. They'll grade the slopes, do the stone for the roadway. That'll take 4 days. Paving should take 2. Guide rail installation will take 1. And then while the guide rail installation is going on, they'll do the seeding or topsoil and seeding. All that is subject to change with weather. It's hopefully going to work out for them. We will see. We are still working through an easement issue, so hopefully that timeline can stay. And we already had our pre-construction meeting. Like I said, the expected closure date's July 5th. They're planning on working Monday through Friday. We got information this morning that might change to 8 to 4:30 instead of 7 to 3:30. As of now, they're not planning on doing any overtime or Saturday work, but that could change if they get bad weather or something like that. They're expecting to reopen the roadway the 18th of August, which I think gives them about a week or week and a half cushion for the beginning of school. And then Pannoni will be on site to do inspections for all major milestones of the project, including making sure it's in the right place this time the first time.
And you'll do daily inspections.
And I'm going to do inspections as often as I can, yes.
Okay. And I think we put this on the agenda, correct me if I'm wrong, for an amendment to the payment schedule, Winnie?
We amended the agenda to provide for the expenditures of funds to resolve the easement issue.
Okay. So we don't need to take any other action than the issue with the easement on this? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and just if you just want to give me the next slide real quick, this is just an overview of the proposed detour, which will be Pemberton Road, Cedar Springs down to West Baltimore Pike, and then up Bancroft to go into Bancroft Woods, and obviously vice versa. And then the majority of Bancroft Road will be closed to through traffic, but really the only place that anything's going to be happening is right at the bridge.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
You are very welcome. It is now that we paid for it, yes. Loftus Construction is doing the work.
not that Loftus.
And they're the same ones that did the Baltimore Pike Bridge for PennDOT as well.
Correct. They're the ones that did the Baltimore Pike Bridge right at Bancroft Road 2021, I believe that was.
Mill
And
Road
then they
in
did the
Canton.
one that on, right at Mill Road by the Rite Aid. And they're also the ones that did the 162 bridge in Emeryville after Hurricane Isaias, I think it was, when it was damaged and closed for a number of years, actually. The cost for construction was not to exceed 366,000, I believe. Not including the structure itself.
Just in time.
Kenny, you got-
368,000, it's raining.
As well.
Take your time.
No, it was 366.
I'll grab up. I want coffee.
Capital funds.
It was a capital improvement and we've already paid for the bridge, correct?
Correct. The structure has been paid for.
Either last year or the year before.
Yeah, it was last year because the project was supposed to take place last year, but it was postponed due to the Egypt Run Bridge taking longer than expected.
So this is a capital improvement that is spread over 2 budgets.
Any other questions?
Nope. We
Thank
just
you.
need to take action on the not to exceed for the,
A motion?
motion to
Okay.
authorize our solicitor to negotiate the easement access we need for an amount not to exceed, what do we agree, 10,000? Yeah.
I'll make the
Yeah.
motion.
A second? Second. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Then the last is the personnel handbook.
Yeah, so the entire added red line version is there. Just to kind of provide a process overview, when I came in, I kind of understanding kind of a lot of policy type things that needed to be reassessed. The handbook was one that not only I deemed to be not wholly compliant with, I would consider to be all required provisions to enable to have a risk offset for employee management, but also township officials came forward to me and with some understanding that there were still some issues at hand within our current policy. So this is where it made sense to commission or retain Township Labor Council, who oversees this function pretty routinely. This is off at Kerman. And so they provided the sequencing of draft measures to overhaul. It's almost an overhaul because it almost doubles or plus the page count, but essentially things that we were missing, you can see there in terms of the crafted section, disability employee work schedules in terms of overtime and comp time, hazardous weather conditions in terms of reporting to the township, our holiday calendar being in alignment with the federal calendar, and then we can choose other kind of float holidays as required based off of the actual calendar dates when those certain holidays have surrounding dates to them. There was an attempt to do a review of the paid time off policy, but we shelved that for having further analysis because we would have to come up with a more holistic kind of grandfathering type approach, but it would be staff exploring a more, we'll call them like a leave earning balance kind of statement functionality to accruing leave versus the anniversary process that we had to date. So we didn't touch that, but we are considering to amend that in the next version of the handbook. Another one we looked to adopt was having an FMLA policy, so Family Medical Leave Act, as well as the drug and alcohol abuse, tattoos and body art type policy, as well as social media, which in a modern organization is almost a requirement. A disciplinary procedure, as well as a grievance policy, so township staff know how they're able to report certain documented instances from a grievance standpoint. So I would consider to be those all required components of a fully vetted and tested employee handbook, and that this version addresses everything now as advised through our retained labor council attorney. So if you have any questions about process and what's included, but this at least in terms of the township being a little bit more offset from a risk exposure standpoint, we are more, I would say, we are less exposed to those types of instances. So any questions?
Any amendments or additions, deletions, we can do that at a later date, correct?
Correct. Those are ones when I talked to Neil and his team, it was ones that they're more township specific initiatives. Another one is just that I think there had been the understanding of what we had to adopt had to be fully compliant with the police department. And the issue with that is the police department kind of drove the boat on what we adopted as a township. And number one, that's not necessarily the case. The township manager, under the provided approval of the board, sets the umbrella of which any sort of collective bargaining occurs underneath that umbrella, specifically with that policing agency. We didn't have to set our standards to their standards. And that's kind of the way that it went. And the second part is the police department is now wholly separated as a separate entity. So we need to update our language to be more inclusive, or to be more coverage in terms of a holistic approach towards an employee handbook policy. Another one we looked at, and kind of the same time that we're going to update our paid time off policy that we'll bring back as an amendment, is the medical reimbursement kind of component to it, the 50% rule, to as an incentive to, if you have your own policy. We would look at that number as well, because that was provided as a recommendation to review if it still made sense for the township to do that. So there could be a potential update to that where there would be some, we'll call it budgetary implications, but it would be only to lessen our payouts for providing a robust incentive structure. So more to follow on that one, but everything else included is in the red line component up there. So if you have any questions on that, please let me know.
Good.
I had a quick question about the social media policy. It says it will apply to you at all times during your employment with the township and will continue in full force and effect after your employment concludes, regardless of the reason for separation. So why is that, and how is that even enforceable? More specifically, the after your separation part?
The way it was explained to me, and I had a similar question, was I believe it was the actual alignment with township accounts. So if you are governing a township current account, you have access. That was what was my understanding of it. So it's more of like a termination that you're no longer aligned with the township social media account structures. But no more than that, because you're right, you couldn't enforce someone's, just if they wanted to go on and badmouth us, via their own personal Facebook account, they are more than able to
Yes,
do
so
so.
it's simply related to township
Correct.
accounts.
Yep.
So
One would assume that once their employment is terminated, their access to
Locked
those
out.
accounts would be.
Well, it's one of those ones where the provision provides it, but you have to follow through with actual
correct.
decommissioning of account access, which that's a separate issue, but this implies that if you were account manager for a social media account, you would lose your access to it.
Okay. Do any of the people who are going to live under the rules have any suggestions, any ideas? You all good with it, Kenny?
The grievance policy is not updated yet.
Referring to overtime and comp time for part-time employees. The weekly work schedule, or the work week specifies midnight Sunday to 11:59 PM Saturday. That should switch to match the section above.
That's right.